Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Fuller here, talking about Metasounds. And in today's video, I wanted to just back up a little bit, and I've been talking to a lot of people lately in the audio world, in the technical audio design world, in the sound design world about Metasounds, and I just thought it'd be cool to just kind of give what I think maybe like the top 5 things you should know about Metasounds, especially if you're new to Metasounds or if you're transitioning to Unreal from other engines or whatever it may be. I think there's a few basic concepts with Metasounds that you just gotta know like the back of your hand. They're basic concepts, but knowing these will save you a lot of headaches and crap in the future. So I wanted to talk about today. So I'm just gonna do some brain dumping here on things I've learned over the last 9 months about Metasounds that I wish I would have known the day that I started. So let's jump in. So first, let's just create a Metasound. So I'm just gonna just jump over here, create an empty Metasound. I'm gonna call it Metasound tutorial. Simple enough, and we're gonna double click on it. One thing to know right away that's really helpful is this is a Metasound source. This is not a blueprint. It looks like it, but it's not a blueprint. This is not a execution graph as much as it is a flow of audio graph, okay? And so the first thing you need to know is Metasounds have inputs and they have outputs. And this is everything that happens in between is gonna be the flow of the audio, the scripting of the audio, the parameters, the blending, leveling, whatever you do inside the Metasound is gonna happen inside this Metasound graph. But ultimately, a Metasound by itself has no audio. So when you hit play, you see the number moving here. That means the Metasound is playing. And so a lot of times people, hey, my Metasound's not, I don't hear something or something's not working properly. So one thing that I wish I would have known from day one was that just because a Metasound's playing doesn't mean that it's gonna create sound. And that's really important to know. And so the other thing is you have the output here, and this is going to the audio engine. If whatever's happening in your Metasound if whatever is happening in your Metasound graph is not going ultimately to the output, then you're also not going to hear anything. So kind of think of it like this. This input on play is like the gate opening from the game that allows all of the audio to do its stuff and then passes back out of the Metasound back into the audio engine. So while everything is happening inside the Metasound, it comes in from here, the trigger execution. This is an execution, and this would come from something in the blueprint or something in the game, executing all of your logic, which we have none here, and then passing back to the output. So I wish I would have known that from day one. It's a flow graph, not an execution graph. The other thing is, so how do we get audio in? So we're gonna right click, and when you have you can see here when you right click all of the options that you can have. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna type the word wave and pull up a wave player. Okay, so now we have added a wave player to this Metasound. I'm gonna click on this and I'm gonna grab one of my sounds here. Which one do I want? Low strings. Yeah, let's grab this, 86 BPM. So now I have the audio. If I hit play, again, nothing's happening because this is not connected to the engine yet, in theory. So anytime you hit play on a Metasound, it triggers the play and it triggers this node. But if this node is not hooked up to anything, it's not gonna do anything else. So the first thing you gotta know is that when you want something to happen in your Metasound, you gotta bring something off of here. Or, as you'll learn later, you can just have the Metasound running and then use other triggers simply by dragging off this and promoting to a graph input. Now you have a play trigger. But just keep in mind, when you hit play, it's not gonna trigger this pin. This pin has to be triggered from logic outside the Metasound. Or, right here, you can simulate it. So now it's playing. So it's really important to understand the importance of what's called inputs. And that's the other thing that I wish I would have understood at day one, is inputs are what brings information in from the blueprints, from the game, from the actions that are happening. Whether it's a float, an integer, a variable, whatever it is, the inputs bring that in. And you can create as many inputs as you want. Well, I mean, I'm sure there's a limit. I don't know what it is, but it's probably hundreds. If you right click on input, you can create your own input and call it, I don't know, just say loop sound. So that is now an that didn't work. Loop sound. So that is now an input trigger. And these inputs over here, you can drag out and use them to hook up. Again, it's a flow. You're hooking up the flow. So if I bring in loop sound, this is a float input. So this is sending a float. Where is it sending it to? Wherever you want it to go. So if I wanted to go to pitch shift, I can just drag it off here. Now inside this Metasound graph, we can manipulate this float in real time. And that's really important. So let's hook this Metasound up. I'm going to come in off the on play trigger. If I hit play, I hear nothing. Why? Because the output of the audio, which are these purplish kind of color, I don't know what color that's called, it's kind of purplish, I guess, fuchsia or something. This comes out and it goes to the output. Now we have completed the connection. It's almost like an electronic circuit. You bring it in, you complete the circuit, and then it goes out and you have a flow of information. So now when I hit play, turn that up, we hear it, and this Metasound is playing. Now when this file is done, it is going to stop. That can easily be fixed just by clicking this loop boolean. So now when I hit play, it's just going to continue to run. Now this Metasound is going to run forever, or until the game ends, until I stop it. And now that the audio is hooked up, it's coming out here. So back to this input here. So I've brought this input into pitch shift. So now when I play it back, you can hear I'm in real time adjusting the pitch shift float. So that's important to know. So inputs, you can adjust the Metasounds in real time. These inputs are also, again, what you're communicating to the Metasounds from the game itself, from the blueprint. So I can create a blueprint send that's feeding this Metasound in real time to adjust the pitch. You can delete that. The other thing that I wish I knew about Metasounds from day one was that the majority of the adjustments are on a scale of 0 to 1. So let's add a mixer here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let's just add a mixer, and it's a mono 2-channel mixer, and we're going to go out here. Now there's nothing in this other channel, but you see here gain is at 1. 1 is the maximum value. Well, I mean, you can go higher, but you could start clipping. 1 is, I guess, what you would consider appropriate full volume or unity. 0 is off, nothing. So when I play my Metasound, you hear nothing. So let me pull in, again, let's pull in an input. So we're going to make an input, drag and promote to input. Now we have a gain for this. I can adjust in real time. So let me hit play on the Metasound, and now I'm going to bring the gain up. So there you go. You hear it getting softer. 0.5 is half. So the majority of the things that you find in gaming and code, especially, you'll find that a scale of 0 to 1 is used a lot. So if you gain this up to 5, it's going to get loud. Now that's probably not appropriate. It just means that my audio source is too soft that I have to gain this up to 5. Now you'll see over on the meter, it's still not even close to clipping because this audio file was really low. But just for good practice, you really want to try to make 1 your loudest so that you're always working with those scales. So that's what I wish I would have known from day one. Another thing I wish I would have known is that anytime you drag a Metasound into your level and you come down here, it's going to be on auto activate. So auto activate basically means as soon as the game starts, this Metasound is going to start playing. And that's a handy feature unless you don't want it to start playing. Now keep in mind, playing just means that this starts. It doesn't mean you might hear things, because I might actually pull this playpen off and I might just have this playpen empty. So when it starts, Metasound's running, but I haven't triggered any logic yet. So what I want to do is I want to create my own trigger, and let's call this for real play. Okay? So now when I play my Metasound, this has to get triggered in order to play it. So let me hook this back up to the audio. Okay, so now we have, we want to use this trigger. So coming back here to the game, I have this, I have it on auto activate. And then the other thing I want to do is I want to go here, and when this plays, okay, well, we'll come back to that. Okay, so now when I hit play, you hear nothing. Another thing I wish I would have known from day one is that when you go to command line, you can enter stat audio, and this is going to pull up a window that shows you your resources that you're using. So when right now we're playing, and look, active sounds 1. Okay, we have 1 active sounds. When I hit stop, the audio source is gone. Okay, so our sound is active and it's playing, but the audio source is not playing. Wait, let me start over that. So now when I hit play, you see we have 1 wave instance, 1 active sound. So our Metasound is indeed playing. However, if I go over here and I click the Metasound, and I go down and I turn off auto activate, now when I hit play, you'll see it's not running. So this is important to know. I look at the Metasound this way. It can either be running or it can not be running. But just because it's running doesn't mean that audio is playing, because in order to get the audio playing, you have to have all of this stuff hooked up properly. So I hope that makes sense. So there's a difference between the Metasound running and the audio playing. The audio playing is going to be determined by, again, this flow of information. We're taking this trigger and we're telling it to do something, and we're taking this trigger. Now, here's another thing I wish I would have known from day one: how to access these triggers. So I have, let's go back in here, and I want to reactivate my Metasound. So we're going to click on auto activate. So now when I hit play, our Metasound is playing, but we don't hear anything. How do we get to that? So another thing I wish I would have known is, let's open up the level blueprint. So what you can do now to access this trigger, how do I access this trigger? Well, I have to access this trigger through a Metasound interface parameter. So the way you do that is you go to your third person map. Let's click on our Metasound. So we're going to select, our Metasound is selected. Actually, let me turn off the stat audio command just by typing that again. So I'm clicking on the Metasound, and then when I go into my blueprint, I can right click and get a reference to it. Then I drag off here and I get audio component. Now once I have the audio component, I can access this trigger. And the way you do that, this is called a execution trigger. So if you come out here and you type execute, trigger parameter, now as you can see, we have this audio parameter control interface. This name has to be this name. So let's copy this name and let's paste it here. So now when this gets executed, it will execute this pin. And let's do that, just go on begin play. So now when this game starts, it's going to execute this trigger, and it's going to trigger this. The Metasound will already be playing because it's auto-activated. So when I hit play, now we have audio because it's playing. Now how do I access another parameter? So for instance, let's say we want to access pitch shift. We're going to create an input. It's called pitch shift. I'm going to take that space out because I don't like spaces. So we're going to copy this. Now how do we access this float parameter? Well, let's go back here. Again, we can pull off here and we can set, because we're not executing a parameter, we're setting a parameter. So we're going to set float parameter because that's a float. In what name? In this name, pitch shift. So we're going to set this in pitch shift, and then we're going to set it to whatever value we want. And we're going to do that here. And we're also going to pull this off of here. Actually, let's do a delay. So let's do a delay so we can hear it. Let's go delay 1 second, and then we're going to trigger the float pitch shift. And let's just go down an octave. No, that's too much. Let's go down, I don't know, like 4 half steps. Okay. So now we're going to trigger the sound. It's going to start playing, and then 1 second later, it's going to take this to -4. So let's see what happens. There you go. Now, one thing to keep in mind with pitch shift, you're also changing the speed of the audio. You can fix that. I'll show you how to do that at another time. You can check out my BPM tutorial, and that I show you how to do that. So this is how you access the Metasounds. Now, there's a lot of other things too, but I just wanted to kind of keep this video short, but just kind of like the basics. Things I wished I knew about Metasounds from day one. Now, one other thing. I wish I would have known the power of the debug. So one thing you can do is, how do you know this is playing? Well, you can come out here and you can do a print string, and you can just call this is playing. And then what happens is this is going to print this in the log, which is down here. So let's pull this log over to here. And now when we hit play, it's going to print this. Boom. See? Is playing. This is a visual way to know if something is playing. It doesn't have to be that either. You could also go put it here. So then we know if the audio is playing. So right now it's not playing. But if we execute this, now it is playing. So these come in real handy. You can use it to trigger cue points. You can use it to find out what the loop ratio is. For example, you can come out here and you can print a float to the log, and we're going to trigger that on play. And this is going to be called loop ratio. And what this will do is it'll tell us, once we trigger it, the loop ratio is 0.000448. So you can see how these print logs can come in handy as well. One other thing to know is the unfinished node. This is specifically used for one shot, meaning a sound that you want to start and stop. If you're doing looping stuff, you don't want to use this because this will kill the sound. And so what this does is this stops everything, and basically it's kind of like destroy actor. When this is triggered, see, if I put this on play, it's just gonna, as soon as I play it, it's gonna stop it. And it stops it, and you heard that click. This is a really brutal way of ending something. But if you have like an explosion that has layers and it's got 3 or 4 metasounds, you can use this so that when the audio's done, it pulls that metasound out of memory. One thing to keep in mind though, once you destroy this metasound, it's no longer in your level. So you have to access it again, whether it be by spawning it or some sort of action by the player. It's not just gonna appear. Whereas if your metasound is playing, let's say you have, instead of on finish, you have a stop trigger. So you want to stop the metasound. So right now the metasound's playing. I can start it, I can stop it, I can start it, I can stop it, and the metasound's still running. And then eventually you'll want it to end. And so you can figure out with logic, you could create a new node, you could create a separate node here, so that when, in your game, if you want to get rid of that sound, whenever you're at, you could just trigger that on finished and it will get it out of memory. So those are really important things to know about Metasound. So anyways, that's kind of like an introductory But it's more of a recap, and really for those of you who are just starting in Metasounds, I wanted to save you some headache, because it is really, if you know these basic things, it will save you a lot of headache in the future. So hopefully this was helpful. Thanks for checking out the channel, and please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.